The overcast sky hid the sunrise, but the gloom of dawn revealed the cliffs and the crumbling ruins of the Dragonblight coast, just barely coming into view. It would be hours yet before Icecrown Citadel would come into sight. Sally Whitemane carefully studied Darien Mograine out of the corner of her eye. He had busied himself with the work of command all night long, issuing curt orders to the crew of Icarus in preparation for a siege. Now he was staring down at a map of Northrend, eyes unmoving, probably lost in thoughts. That won't do, Whitemane decided. If Mograine was distracting himself from the terrible task before him, he might be vulnerable to Four Dragons' control. When the last Lich King made you his puppet, what did it feel like? She asked. And Mograine looked up at her. Pray you don't find out. I'm not trying to bring up terrible memories, she lied. But Four Dragon must know we're coming. If he tries to rip our wills from us, we should be prepared to resist. How did you escape Arf's control at Light's Hope? How did you stay free? The High Lord narrowed his eyes. I was on holy ground when I was set free. Righteous anger kept me whole until Arthas was defeated. So, the light and anger. Will either of those help us now? Asked Whitemane, putting an edge on her voice. She wanted to provoke the latter from him, if she could. From the moment she'd been raised into undeath, she'd been filled with loathing. A life dedicated to eradicating the undead, only to then become one of them, was a particularly cruel irony. Yet she had agreed to her duty. She had used her dark power to defend Azeroth, no matter her personal distaste. She would not let her suffering amount to nothing, no matter how conflicted Mograine felt. I would not call for the Light's aid today, Death Knight, except as a last resort, Mograine said coldly. If you are truly lucky, the Light will answer by burning your corrupted flesh to cinders. Trust me, it's not a pleasant way to die. Whitemane knew he was speaking from experience with that too. I have doubts about you, High Lords. When the time comes to kill Bolvar, you might falter. Mograine looked back down at the table. Killing him would be so easy for you then? Whitemane showed teeth, and she let her smile return. Did you think my desire to kill the Lich King was said in jest? No. After another moment of staring at the map of Northrend, he finally pushed it away. I have no anger towards Bolvar, only regrets, but I will carry out my duty. I promised him I would. Suddenly, Mograine's eyes widened. What? He began. Whitemane felt it an instant later. The presence in her mind, the connection between her and the Lich King. It was no longer dormant. For a moment, it felt like it had caught fire. No, it wasn't heat that Whitemane felt. It was the searing cold of frostbite, slowly enveloping the Lich King's presence. It's happening. High Lord, is that... Yes, Mograine said. This is what Arthas felt like. The Helm's power. Bolvar isn't holding it back any longer. He's fallen? Whitemane asked. Yes, Mograine said. Whitemane heard him speak in a soft, mournful tone. Bolvar, I don't understand. By the light, I can feel it too, Whitemane thought. Bolvar had embraced the corrupting curse of undeath in its rawest form, a hungry and eager river of decay seeking to consume the very essence of life itself. If Whitemane had any doubts left, they had vanished. The Lich King must die at once. She could feel the faintest sense of his power seeping through his presence, like drops of water beating on a cold glass, running down the inside of her mind and splashing onto her broken soul. A few days of that, even if Bolvar tried to shield them from it, even if he wanted to, and the Four Horsemen might be as lost as he was. She was relieved to see Mograine's expression harden. There he is, Whitemane thought. The High Lords, finally ready for battle. He glanced out into Northrend, and then banged his fist on his breastplate. We have no choice now, he said. There's no turning back. If Bolvar remains the Lich King when the sun falls, there may be no stopping him. Mograine raised his voice, letting his words echo throughout Echoras. For Azeroth, for the living, and for each other, we ride to kill Bolvar. One day earlier, Darian Mograine had approached the frozen throne, with his blade drawn and his soul heavy. Bolvar, Mograine announced, we must talk, now. There was no answer. A frigid gust whipped across the peak of the citadel, blasting ice across Mograine's armor. He took the first step up towards Bolvar. He couldn't tell if the Lich King was looking at him. The ice surrounding Bolvar lacked its usual clarity. Bolvar, I made you a promise. Mograine took another step upwards. Do you remember? Still nothing. Still, Bolvar didn't look at him. Mograine felt a swell of grief rise into his throat. Of all the emotions to carry over into Undeath, I was given sorrow, Mograine thought mournfully as he continued to climb. I swore I would not let you become like Arthas. Another step. Say something, Bolvar. Do not make me do this. Mograine took another step and almost slipped. Tiny rivulets of water running down the stairs past his boots. Mograine didn't understand. Where was that coming from? Mograine stormed up the last few stairs, his boots splashing in water with each step. Just before the frozen throne, he stopped, eyes wide. The ice surrounding the Lich King was melting. It already seemed about a third gone. Bolvar, Mograine whispered. What are you doing? Finally, those two orange eyes met his. It was foolish to come alone, Mograine. Yes, it was. Mograine had come with the hope that Bolvar would respond to an ultimatum, not that he would find the Lich King preparing to leave his throne. I waited too long to confront him, Mograine thought. Worse, he might have forced Bolvar's hands. We need to know that you haven't given in to the Helm's temptation, said Mograine. You've held fast as the jailer of the damned for years. Have I? Bolvar was calm, too calm. By keeping the Helm's power at bay, I made myself blind to its purpose. Purpose? Whatever that is, we can help you stop it. But you cannot give in to the Helm's power for any reason, Bolvar. You know the consequences. The armies of the dead, marching over the barren world they destroyed. Life's place on Azeroth lost. Yes, Mograine whispered. And who will stop that, High Lords? I have fought one Lich King, Mograine said. I have strength yet for another. The presence flashed with grim humor. If you were to kill me and take my place tonight, Mograine, you'd find your reign short-lived. What did that mean? Now you mock me. I don't want your helm or your throne. I'd tear down this whole blasted citadel and every creature in it if it were to condemn so many. Mograine swept his arm, gesturing the entire view of the fortifications around Icecrown. I can help you. All four of us can, no matter what the burden. You would die. All four of you would. Then we die, Mograine bellowed. Do you think any of us fear dying again? We will ride forth against any enemy who threatens Azeroth, and if we fall, we will make them pay for it 100-fold. Yes, I hope you will, the Lich King said. A crack appeared in the ice above the Lich King's head. A small ravine split open across his face, tracing a jagged line across Bolvar's neck. A large chunk of ice crumbled to the ground near Mograine's feet, smashing to tiny crystals that blew away in the winds. Mograine tensed. There was now a gap in the ice that exposed Bolvar's neck. One true strike of my sword, he thought. But something was wrong. It was like Bolvar was daring him to do it. Mograine closed his eyes for a moment, gathered his thoughts, and decided to swing his blade. But before his muscles twitched, the presence reacted. Suddenly, Mograine couldn't move. Bolvar's will was stopping him. Mograine thrashed wildly inside his mind, trying to shake off Bolvar as he had once slipped Arvis's leash. And it worked. Something gave way. It was as if Bolvar couldn't quite secure his grip on Mograine's soul. Mograine swung his blade at Bolvar's neck without hesitation. The presence squeezed. The sword dropped from his hands. Despair crashed down onto Mograine as his weapon bounced off the ice and water just in front of the Lich King's throne. The presence firmly held on to his being, lashing it to Bolvar's will with bonds stronger than steel. I have failed. Pick up your blade, Mograine. You will have need of it. Now the presence had absolute control over him. Mograine was trapped inside the prison of the helm's making, unable to move or speak on his own, as his arms casually picked up his blade and sheathed it. Now walk. Mograine's feet obeyed. The presence forced him to turn away from the frozen throne and march back down the steps. Bolvar summoned, Mograine summoned, in accordance with Bolvar's unspoken will, a death gate to Icarus. I could send you back as my instrument. The other 3 are waiting for you there, yes? How many could you cut down before they finally destroyed you? A glimmer of hope. Do it. Send me back, Mograine thought, and Bolvar noticed. I see. They're waiting for you there, and White may suspect that you won't come back as yourself. They will be ready for that. Good. The Death Gate activated. A plume of dark violet mist formed into a pyramid, just taller than Mograine. The presence forced Mograine to walk towards it. Do not return alone, Mograine. Only together will the 4 of you have a chance to kill the wielder of the helm. Farewell. Mograine stepped through the gate to Icarus, and the mist disappeared behind him. So too did Bolvar's control. The presence was dormant again, silent, lurking in his soul like a viper, waiting for the right moment to strike. Mograine fell to his knees, his head in his hands. He was free, but he felt more lost than ever. It was almost time. Earlier, they had agreed on a plan of attack. If Bolvar did not immediately surrender and remove the helm, Icarus would bombard his ranks, clearing the way for the 4 horsemen's direct assault on the Lich King himself. What happened after that would depend on how many of them could resist the Lich King's control, if any of them could. But then, the presence had changed. They were close enough to feel more of Bolvar's influence. They were still perhaps an hour away from Icecrown Citadel, too far away to see the frozen throne with their own eyes, but the overcast skies had cleared enough to see its menacing silhouette. And now they could see something in their minds. Mograine had noticed it first. A strange scene flashed through his head. One of Bolvar's scourge falling to the ground, a black-wreathed arrow aimed in its body. A few moments later, it was dozens of scourge strewn before the frozen throne, then dozens more. There was a battle underway at Icecrown. They could see it through the presence. No, Bolvar was showing them. The 4 horsemen stood silent on Icarus, watching the distant spire. As the minutes passed, the images became clearer. Whitemane suddenly gasped. That's Windrunner! Bolvar's fighting Sylvanas Windrunner! Once she said it, Mograine could see it. The glowing eyes, the fresh scar across her face. It was Sylvanas. She had come for the helm. And suddenly, right then, Mograine understood. Only together will the 4 of you have a chance to kill the wielder of the helm, Bolvar had said. Kill the wielder, not kill me, because perhaps the helm wouldn't belong to him any longer. He knew she would come, Mograine realized. Bolvar had guessed Windrunner would challenge him for the helm, and he had planned to use the helm to stop her, because Sylvanas would never claim the power of the Lich King, only to keep it dormant. But Bolvar would have known that there would be consequences. There was only one outcome to use in the helm. a dead world. It didn't matter whether he could withstand the corruption for a month, a week, or a minute after he accepted its power. It would end the same way. Azeroth would fall. Unless 4 knights who swore to defend Azeroth could stop him while he was still weak from his battle with Windrunner. Even if Windrunner won, she would be a novice to the Helm's power. She would be vulnerable, if only for a short while. Bolvar had provoked Mograine and the rest of the 4 horsemen into coming to kill him at the exact moment his reign might end. And he had kept them isolated, all of those new Death Knights isolated from his control as much as he could. So no matter who won, the horsemen would have a chance. Trollbane locked eyes with Mograine. Does this change anything for us? Mograine turned to the others. No, this changes nothing. Our duty remains the same. Then he looked out towards Icecrown again. Bolvar knew this day was coming. Either he would win, or there would be a new Lich King. Queen, Whitemane said. Indeed, Bolvar. I wish you trusted me enough to tell me. But no. Mograine would have insisted on being there to fight Sylvanas with him. So would have the others. Judging by the corpse before the frozen throne, all 4 would have died. He wanted us here, now, to finish off the victor when the battle's done. After Sylvanas had cut through the Scourge for us, before she has a chance to learn how to dominate our wills. Nazgrim considered that for a moment. One of us will need to take his place. Silence reigned for a long while after that. Whitemane's eyes flickered between each of the horsemen, as if trying to see if any amongst them would be eager for that duty. A distant noise, almost a thunderclap, brought their attention back to Icecrown. The presence trembled. Bolvar's icy, corrupted determination was now shot through with desperation. Mograine saw in his mind's eye, with absolute clarity, Sylvanas extending an arm towards Bolvar's head. And then, pain. Pain for all of them, as sharp as a knife's blade stabbing into their skulls. Mograine shouted and hurled his own helm across the Hall of Commands, pressing his palms deep into his temples as though they were trying to squeeze the pain out, only distantly aware that the others were shouting too. A few moments later, the pain ended so suddenly that Mograine fell to his knees with relief, still gripping his head. It was a while before any of them could speak. "Where's the presence?" Nazgrim asked in a strained voice. Mograine didn't understand, didn't answer, just enjoyed the absence of pain. It felt wonderful. "Where's Bolvar?" the orc asked again. "I can't feel him." He was right. Bolvar's presence was gone. No, not gone. Empty, Mograine realized. The conduit of control was still there, but it was unoccupied, just he had once felt after Arv's defeat. "Sylvanas has taken the helm," Mograine said. He locked eyes with the others. "She is our target now." Whitemane snorted. "Understood." "And what about Bolvar?" Nazgrim rumbled. Trollbane looked toward Mograine. "I do not believe he is the Lich King anymore. We'll save him if we can," Trollbane said. "Agreed," Mograine said, and he looked past Trollbane towards the undead crew of Acheris. Most had gone still. Those with minds were looking around, dazed. Those without minds were looking at nothing and beginning to twitch. There must always be a Lich King. Soon, most of Acheris' crew and the rest of the Scourge and Northrend would revert to the mindless, frantic violence. And if Sylvanas put on the helm, she would sense Acheris' approach. She would sense the 4 horsemen's intentions. Mograine had no doubt that she would try to bend them to her will to stop them. Even if she does not succeed, we will have to fight through the rest of her Scourge. He gestured deep into the flying fortress. "We may be far enough away from Icecrown to keep control of Acheris' crew. Get them ready. This will be our only chance." And then he stopped, his mouth still working soundlessly. The presence in his head was changing. It wasn't painful this time. Not really. Mograine had never felt anything like it. Ever. Not even when Arthas fell. If the presence was a conduit of control and power, it felt like the conduit was crumbling, being split apart. Mograine didn't understand, but it felt liberating. Like his mind had been bound, and the chains were slipping away one by one. Like he hadn't even been aware of how firmly he'd been held under its control. Nazgrim suddenly shouted, "What is she doing?" Mograine looked towards Icecrown just in time to see the sky shatter. A shockwave hit Icarus, and Mograine almost lost his footing. Nazgrim grabbed his arm, steadying him as the floating fortress rocked back and forth in the air. "Steady," Mograine shouted. "Keep Icarus steady." A few of the crew responded to his commands. Even so, it felt like the fortress might fall out of the sky. Then it leveled out. If they could have breathed a sigh of relief, they would have. "Hold our position," Nazgrim barked. With trained eyes, he scanned the horizon, assessing every detail. Mograine stared at Icecrown. The blue sky above it was gone, broken into pieces. He was staring into a dark realm, choked thick with black mist, lit only by an angry orange and amber glow that flashed like lightning bolts. And plunging down from the fog was another structure, hanging directly over Icecrown's citadel. And staring at it, Mograine realized that the presence was truly gone. The helm was destroyed, and with its destruction, the veil between life and death, Mograine breathed. She has broken it. Bolvar had made a terrible mistake, Mograine realized. He must have assumed that Sylvanas was coming to wield the helm, not to destroy it. But how could he have known? How could he have known destroying it would do that? Mograine heard a blade whistling through the air behind him, and then the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. "High Lords, draw your weapon," Trollbane called out. And Mograine did, still staring at the sky. Something bumped into him and he turned, raising an eyebrow. It was one of the crew of Icarus, clawing at his armor, trying to kill him. He absently cut it down. He noticed several bodies lying around him already. The Scourge has no Lich King. Mograine finally understood. Light willing, it never shall again. That snapped him back into action. Only a few of the crew in the hall had gone wild so quickly, and the 4 horsemen made short work of them. Mograine surveyed the rest of the Hall of Command, began issuing orders. There was clarity in chaos. Mograine had learned long ago, seeing problems meant they could be dealt with, one catastrophe at a time. "I don't know what Sylvanas is planning next, but Bolvar might. We need him," Mograine said. "Whitemane, Nazgrim, we're still an hour away from Icecrown. When we get there, you two are going to find Bolvar. If he lives, bring him back." They nodded. Mograine then nodded at Trollbane. "Until then, we secure Icarus. We'll dominate those who still can be controlled and put down the rest. We need to save as many as we can for whatever comes next." "Understood," said Trollbane. Together, they strode deeper into the fortress. Soon, the weapons sang in the cold Northrend air. Whitemane kept her eyes on the frozen throne as she and Nazgrim swooped toward it. The shattered sky above her, she ignored. That was a problem for later. She looked carefully for any signs that Sylvanas was still here, but it appeared the Banshee Queen was already gone. The orc arrived first, leaping out onto the ruined remnants of the frozen throne. Whitemane landed an instant later, bolting past Nazgrim, nimbly avoiding the corpses of the fallen Scourge. She spotted Bolvar near the center of the platform, knocked down onto his side. He was staring upward at the sky, shock and horror written across his face. Whitemane understood completely. She knelt beside him, her hand cupping him behind his neck. "Is she gone?" she asked. Bolvar seemed barely able to form words. Whitemane suspected it wasn't because of his wounds, but just the sheer, incomprehensible scale of the disaster he had failed to prevent. "Yes, Sylvanas is gone." Regret and guilt swelled in his voice. I didn't know. I didn't even dream. Now Nazgrim was kneeling at his side. We're going back to Ekrus, he said. There is much to be done. Together, he and Whitemane helped Bolvar stand up. Bolvar's hand gripped the armor on her shoulder. Do you know what she's done? No. Tell us when we're safe, Nazgrim said. You can tell us what to do next. Bolvar looked at them both with confusion. I am not the Lich King any longer, he said. A pity. Whitemane threw Bolvar's arm over her shoulder, supporting his weight. I came all this way to kill the Lich King. Rude of you to step down just as I arrive. You don't have to follow my orders, Bolvar said. Obviously. Whitemane curled her lips. Nazgrim was smiling too. You tried to arrange your own death to secure victory. Loktar Ogar, guide our blades, and we'll obey. Bolvar closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Whitemane saw determination. Excellent, she thought. He gestured towards the shattered remnants of the Helm of Domination. Gather those then, carefully. They will be needed. Whitemane took Bolvar's full weight as Nazgrim collected the pieces. Then what, High Lords? Bolvar looked up at the sky once again. We'll need allies, as many as we can find. And then we'll charge into the dark heart of death itself. Good, she said. I was worried it was going to be easy.